Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 50. I'm Mark.
I'm Gilles, and not Luke.
Unfortunately, Luke could not be here this week, but he was with us last week when we recorded a portion of this episode. So speaking of last week, on October 20th, 2018, we had the pleasure of attending the 2018 edition of the Eastern Ontario Paranormal Convention, hosted by our friends at Ottawa Paranormal Research and Investigations. While we were there, we managed to catch two lectures, one by quote-unquote medium and happiness coach Aurora North, and another by thorn in the side of ufologists and host of the Den of Lore podcast, Chris Zuger, with whom we spent the majority of our time recording a riveting discussion. Unfortunately, due to technical problems, we were only able to salvage the last half hour of that discussion, which will follow during the latter half of this episode. So Chris, if you're listening, we apologize. In the case of Aurora North's lecture, I don't know if she believed the audience was already primed and needed no further convincing, but her entire talk was peppered throughout with wild-ass assertions about communing with archangels that form part of her so-called spiritual team, opening one-way portals to heaven to allow souls to cross over, and somehow divining the name of someone buried in an unmarked grave, none of which were justified or validated, and all of which were lacking the required extraordinary evidence in order for them to even approach being credible. In contrast, Chris's lecture, on the other hand, was far more rational and focused on the philosophy of why people wrongly believe paranormal celebrities and the problem with woo in the UFO community, touching on such subjects as the necessity of questioning the credibility of reports and seeking out and validating primary sources of information before blindly accepting them as fact. Skepticism means not accepting a claim unless there is sufficient, demonstrable evidence to support it, and is, by definition, the more rational position to hold, especially when it comes to topics like the paranormal. Accepting extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence to support them is to risk being delusional. This is how people get fooled by charlatans and duped by con artists, and it's how people become the victims of fraud and outright deception, which can range from things as close to home as Indian call centers masquerading as the Canada Revenue Agency, to the more outlandish, like so-called mediums charging absurd amounts of money to quote-unquote communicate with dead loved ones. While I can appreciate how believing in the idea of an afterlife may seem comforting, or how a message from the great beyond might bring a temporary sense of peace to a grieving family member, to quote James Randi, no amount of belief makes something a fact, and I would rather an uncomfortable truth than a comforting falsehood. As it stands, there is no evidence to suggest any part of what we identify as the self survives physical death, and while psychics and mediums may truly believe that they have special powers that allow them to speak to the souls of the dead or receive otherworldly information, until and unless they can provide demonstrable evidence to justify their claims, there is no reason to believe them, and every reason to seriously doubt their assertions. So why don't we start with Aurora North's lecture, and then we'll go in and talk about Chris's lecture after that, just to give it a bit of contrast.
Okay.
So what was your first reaction after hearing her lecture?
My first reaction after hearing her lecture is that she found what we were looking at and what we were hearing with her presentation was somebody who found a way to deal with their grief, because she had stated in her presentation that she first started this following the death of her mother, I believe. Is that what it was?
I don't.
The death of a loved one had prompted her to. It seemed like this is what prompted her to look into the idea of I don't know, communicating with the afterlife and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, right off the bat, I'm sure I just sound arrogant for dismissing it that way, but it just seemed painfully obvious to me that this is somebody who lost somebody they loved and then grasped at a whole kind of area of thought that sort of denies that somebody can actually be lost to you.
Right. And I think it wouldn't be an unfair assumption to say that a lot of people who hold a belief in the afterlife or in souls carrying over after death and that kind of thing usually stems from a fear of death or an unwillingness to accept that a loved one has passed on, right? Mm-hmm. And that kind of sometimes can lead into other false beliefs without that aren't justifiable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, it's this unwillingness to just accept the fact that someone has died,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it can become unhealthy,
Yeah.
as I think can be.
Like something that bugs me is as a skeptic, and not in like a haughty sense. I'm just maybe even tending a little bit too much to the cynic side. I don't think so, actually. I don't think I'm much of a cynic, but I'm a skeptic both in the sense that I try to have some integrity and fealty to the truth, but I'm also a skeptic in the sense that I'm doubtful, just on a more reactionary kind of way,
right.
of extraordinary claims, unless there's some adequate kind of evidence or something to back it up.
Right.
But one thing that I struggle with is having that attitude, is that I kind of understand that idea of breaking the spell, and I do have loved ones for whom a big part of their life is believing that they will get to see their loved ones after they're dead, and I kind of feel that I'm too much of a dick, at least on those personal kind of immediate interactions with my loved ones, with my family and stuff like that.
Well, I
feel like I would be too much of a dick to always voice my skepticism about that kind of thing. So when someone in my family talks about a loved one who has died and stuff like that, and how they take solace in the idea that once they go, then finally they'll be together again.
Right.
I don't necessarily need to dispel that.
Yeah, like I have a lot of family who also believe in. They'll say things like, so and so is looking down on you. They must have been looking out for you or something. If something fortuitous happens or something like that, they're proud of you. All this kind of stuff. I'm not about to just dismiss what they're saying, because I'm not an asshole like that.
Right.
They haven't asked to engage me in that kind of discussion, so I'm not going to go ahead and just dispel the myth right off the bat just because I happen to be skeptical about it.
Yeah.
But like I said in the introduction, being a skeptic means not accepting something unless there's sufficient reason to, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the case of Aurora North's lecture, she just asserts all this stuff. Right. And they're all just wild ass assertions. Like,
she's taken it to an extent where I think it's okay for us to actually criticize it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like I'm saying that I think it kind of took root or grew out of a discrete kind of instance of grief and a sort of a defense mechanism to deal with that, and maybe she has a cultural background in which this kind of liberal spiritualism kind of stuff is normal.
Mm-hmm.
But she has made a semi-career out of it. And
I wouldn't even say semi-career. She's made a career out of it.
Right, right. And she's clearly just pushing stuff that is definitely false, and I can't imagine, given the extent to which she pushes all of this stuff, I can't imagine that she doesn't at least at some point get confronted with the falseness of it.
Right.
Because,
like, let's take a look. Let's take the example of the archangels that she claims to be working with. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This on its surface.
Yeah, she calls that her team.
Right, her spiritual team.
And she refers to it and talks about it like a physical team, like an actual
physical entities.
Group partnership or something.
Yeah,
I wonder if she has like a physical real team in addition to that team.
I have no
or
idea.
If like not to be petty or insulting, but I wonder if she just doesn't have any friends or
like
she doesn't have close personal relationships, and she kind of has invented this kind of team, this group to
Yeah, I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility.
to feel this partnership.
But with the example of the archangels, first you need to demonstrate that archangels exist. Right? That's the first thing, right away.
Yeah.
That she hasn't demonstrated that. She just asserts it.
Yeah.
Second, you need to be able to demonstrate a method with which to communicate with said archangels if they do in fact exist, which again, she hasn't demonstrated.
Yeah.
And then she has to demonstrate that she's in fact used this method to reach them, which again, she hasn't demonstrated. So just this one assertion has all these problems built into it right away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That, and at one point she mentioned how she had... she came to the conclusion that spirits were following her around because she went back to her apartment and books are flying off the shelf or something to that effect. So here, you need to demonstrate that A, spirits exist, B, they somehow followed you home, and through what method did that happen?
Yeah.
And then how did you determine that it's in fact spirits, if they do exist, causing this effect to happen?
Right.
Right?
So pretending for a second that maybe ghosts are real and we're following her home, her premise there was that they were following her home because she wasn't educated enough in the whole, like, how you're supposed to deal with them and whether or not, or how open or not open you are.
Oh yeah, the dialing back.
Dialing,
right.
yeah, exactly. And she had apparently then, after these unpleasant encounters with spirits, she had somehow educated herself about how to suddenly be a competent expert in dealing with spirits and closing yourself, as if there is some sort of documentary scholarship that you can. That you can learn from.
A professional certification.
Right.
In mediumship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really seemed like that's how she was kind of approaching it, or how she thought of it.
Right, because at one point she mentioned how she'd stopped these paranormal investigations after an incident happened, and then she came back after having gone through and
that's it.
Kind of attuned herself more to her quote-unquote gift, right?
Yeah.
That... I don't understand where that's coming from. Like, if she had, let's say, for the sake of argument, or let's approach it differently. Like, if I had gone through that, just from my own perspective, if I had gone through that kind of, or had that kind of experience, where I'm having all these weird things happen to me, and I want to investigate it further before I go on and do further paranormal investigations, just to see what the fuck is going on. Mm-hmm. My first step would be to go through it rationally and figure out what the most likely explanation for this would be. It wouldn't be to just assume that I have psychic powers and ghosts are following me around. How do you get from weird shit happening to therefore it must be a ghost or a spirit following me around?
Yeah,
right.
That's always the big question. Right?
Yeah, it's that one logical step.
Yeah,
or it could be more than one logical step. It's a series of steps. That's
something mysterious happened.
Right.
Mysterious equaling I don't know.
Right.
What it was. Therefore, I know it's this other thing.
Yeah, it's an argument from ignorance.
I don't know, therefore I know.
Yeah.
That's
it's a
contrast,
classic argument from ignorance. It's the same as the God thing. I don't know, therefore ghosts. Or I don't know, therefore God.
Therefore God,
right? Or on the flip side of this, I don't know, therefore aliens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No matter if the more credulous the paranormal believers are, the bigger the logical fallacy. Right? Mm-hmm. It's that logical, that argument from ignorance fallacy. It keeps getting invoked whenever people cling to this notion of the paranormal in a lot of cases. I don't want to blanket say all cases because that's not necessarily true, as we'll talk about when it comes to Chris's discussion that we had.
Yeah, about the subjective experience.
Right, exactly. But when it comes to, like I said, the credulous believers in the paranormal, they rely on that argument from ignorance as a justification for their beliefs, which is just... That's the definition of being irrational. It's borderline delusional, and it's unhealthy in a lot of cases because it can fuel these delusions and these self-deceptions to the point where your worldview would be completely shattered if someone tries to present you with an actual rational explanation for it. And a lot of people will push back on that and say, well, no, it can't be that. It might be true in this instance, but I know what happened to me. Like this argument from personal experience thing, right? I know what I saw. The I know what I saw thing.
Yeah.
See, that there's a part of their epistemology that's kind of lacking, right? How do you know that? What led you to that?
You know that you saw. You don't know what you saw.
Right. Exactly.
As long as you're appealing to the paranormal, you know that you saw something. But as soon as you assert some paranormal cause, well, that's automatically telling us that you don't know what you saw.
Yeah. Like, I never argue against people who claim to have seen something. Like, I'll believe them. I believe you saw something.
Yeah.
It's the what and the why that I'm concerned with, right? And I'm more concerned with the truth of a claim than I am with the actual what of it, but that's another story. Like
what do you mean?
said,
what's the distinction between?
I don't so much care.
The
For example, if someone claims to have seen a ghost, I don't really care about that aspect of it. It's what about that is true? Like, is it actually a ghost?
Okay, I see. Yeah.
I'm really concerned with the why and
what are the things we know to be true, and it's that you saw something and that the phenomenon to you looked like this,
right?
And those are the true things we can
So in actuality,
point to.
In actuality, what's the truth behind it? You know,
yeah.
Is there any truth behind it? Because people, like I said, I'm not going to deny that somebody saw something.
Yeah.
It's how did you reach the conclusion that you came to about what you saw? Right? I'm really interested in people's epistemology. Like, how do you go about obtaining that knowledge?
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, there seems to be a problem with their epistemology.
It seems ridiculous to me that epistemology is some sort of arcane fringe subject that you can choose to study once you get to university.
Right.
But we have not deemed it to be at all relevant to anybody's education as they're growing up or at any other point in their life.
Yeah,
like it seems to me this is fundamental. Like when we're teaching kids sort of the fundamentals of education. Well, like thing number one is how do you know what you know?
Right.
You know,
it seems to me that would be kind of important.
And I know that sounds like a pretty heady topic for a little kid, but I was just hearing actually on CBC, I think it was the other day, that somebody is starting this program where they're talking to kids and they're getting kids to start to talk about philosophy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but it's sort of a small scale program. It's not like this is now part of the major curriculum of the province or anything, right? So. But it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this idea that kids, that kids are somehow put upon if you get them to think about abstract things,
right?
Like as if kids are only like Lego men, so they can only deal with like. You know, this block can stick over in this space, and that's it. Yeah. That's all you can talk about with them. It's ridiculous because kids actually are kind of eminently suited to these kind of high-minded kind of things, like hey, Dad, why was I born? You know, like that's like a super philosophical question.
Right, and even the simplest, seemingly easy questions like why is the sky blue? You know, it gets them thinking about it.
There's things that we kind of learn are philosophical, but when you're a kid, even if they are philosophical, they're still concepts that you're capable of playing with and doing your own thinking on.
Yeah. So like when I was a kid, I just started thinking about like if I cut a piece of paper in half, how far can I go? How far can I keep cutting this? If it gets tinier and tinier, right? Like at what point can I stop cutting it? And like fundamentally, I'm thinking about the atom, though I didn't know about that, right? But what's the smallest you can get to something, right?
Yeah.
And this is the kind of shit that kids think about.
Yeah.
And we need to foster that with the example of epistemology. How do you know what you know, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of kids would be interested in learning about that kind of thing without introducing problems like the Gettier problems and paradoxes of like, well, is justified true belief actually justified or true, and like, can you therefore consider it knowledge? Like, without introducing all of the really complex ideas of what constitutes knowledge or actual knowledge and how do you arrive at it.
You can at least prime the pump, right?
Exactly, yeah. You can get them interested in thinking about these ideas, and that'll influence the way they learn down the line. And hopefully, I would think that it would kind of correct some of these logical fallacies that people are kind of brought up to rely on when it comes to thinking about things and believing things. It's that.
Just get kids to acknowledge that there's a difference between what you imagine, like what you're capable of conceiving of in your mind, and like kids know that the difference between an imaginary friend and a real friend, right?
One would hope,
right? Yeah, one would hope. But so that's something that you can get kids to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And so then they're growing up with this idea that, okay, what happens in my mind and the images that are part of my life, some of them might not necessarily be quote unquote real. Right? And I think by we're kind of hamstringing like a big chunk of the population who either don't have the parents to kind of I don't know, imbue this kind of sensibility in their own kids, and we also don't have an education system that does it. So we're just getting people that when they grow up, though they may become generally more educated or in some sense smarter, basically they just become smarter at rationalizing why the imagined stuff might actually be valid because they imagined it, and and then their ego comes into play and stuff, and they see every statement coming out of a person as just something that's competing with the statement of somebody else, and then it's like everything's the same now. Democrats are just like Republicans, and
right?
Both sides are bad, and all
and that's kind of why I wish we'd had more time to talk to at least some of the guests or some of the other speakers at Paracon last week, because I really wanted to ask the question: how do you personally tell the difference between something that's real and something that isn't, or something that exists and something that doesn't? Right? I think that would have got a lot of people to question how they go about rationalizing their beliefs in a way, right? Because, like, how do you tell the difference between something that exists and something that doesn't? And that little piece of epistemology would really help a lot of people. I feel anyway. I think it would have been good to ask Aurora North about this too. Like, how do you tell the difference between something that exists and something that doesn't? And can you therefore apply it to your own system of belief involving all these archangels and spiritual teams and all this other stuff? We didn't get a chance to talk to her personally because she was involved with a bunch of readings and things by the time we wanted to actually get up and talk to her. But it's my first reaction after hearing her lecture was, I have questions. I had so many questions. There was that one point where she, like I said in the introduction, where she supposedly divined the name of this person who was in this unmarked grave and stuff.
Right.
So I wanted to ask her, did you have any prior knowledge of that name before going into this investigation? Yes or no? Right.
Yeah.
And then if no, did you later go back and confirm that someone by that name had actually A, died there, and B, was buried at that specific grave you were supposedly drawn to? Because otherwise, we just have another one of those multiple assertions during her lecture of hers just pulling this name seemingly out of her ass and saying, the spirit told me this is her name and this is why she's drawn or anchored or tethered to this grave.
Yeah.
Right? Completely unjustified claim with no validation to it. So I don't know. I tried to Google.
What's almost as troubling is the fact that she doesn't feel concerned with providing some kind of a backup statement,
right,
for why we should believe something that's totally unbelievable like that, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if we can chalk that
because
up
nobody else can actually do that. Look at something that's unidentified and then just tell you everything about it, or without actually researching on something, you
Right.
know, or so yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah, and like I came up with this other test that I wanted to apply to like a psychic or whatever. I don't know if we would have had the chance at Paracon, and this is just going to spoil it for everybody else listening. You may decide to try this test out for yourself, but I wanted to go up to a psychic, get a reading from them, and just agree with absolutely everything they say, just to see if they can determine my truth from my lies. Right? If they're actually psychic, they should be able to call me out on the fact that I'm just agreeing with every bullshit Barnum statement that they come up with. Yeah. You know, like I see someone recently died in your past. Yep. Mm-hmm. They were really close to you. Yep. Just agree with everything. Just see if they catch on to it, right? Because again, if they're psychic, they should be able to tell.
Well, yeah, and they're gonna want all of those hits. Like every hit is a win for them. Right. So.
And then I'd want to tally it up at the end.
It would be against their interests to deny your affirmation of what they supposedly divined.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So. And at the end of it, I'd want to tally up the number of actual hits.
Yeah.
To which I agreed, and all the misses. Yeah. To which I also agreed, and just compare the results. You know, like, I think it'd be a really interesting experiment just to test the mettle of these so-called psychics.
Yeah. But they don't just ask yes or no stuff.
No, I know.
Like they're gonna say something super Barnum-y, super general, like there's someone close to you with an R in their name, and then you're gonna go yep, and they're gonna go okay, so what was that name and who was that person?
Well, that's something.
So you have to you would have to either make up something.
Well, yeah, they go fishing for it, but like that's the kind of thing I would want to kind of call them out on. You know, like, yeah, you're right. Can you tell me more? I'm just gonna leave it at that. You know, because you actually guessed that really, really on the nose there with your R thing. My sister's name starts with an R, so you would have been a really great psychic.
Yeah, I know.
And at one point, speaking of psychics, Luke went back downstairs during the mass reading or whatever.
Yeah.
When the psychic was kind of giving this thing, and the takeaway that Luke came back with was like. The guy was saying, "Wow, it usually doesn't take this long for things to get going, or whatever." You know, I think he was having a bit of an issue with the crowd. He was trying to fish for information, but wasn't quite.
Well, because he had to follow Chris Zuger, who was priming the crowd for skepticism.
Okay, well, that's a good segue into Chris's lecture. So let's talk about Chris's thing now.
Sure. Yeah, we had a great talk with Chris Zuger.
We did.
It was fun.
Yeah. Like the main focus there was, like I said in the introduction, kind of the philosophy of why people shouldn't believe the UFO celebrities or the paranormal celebrities, and applying a healthy dose of skepticism to that particular area of research.
He's this guy's on a crusade against people who are basically exploiting.
Right.
Exploiting these fringe topics like ufology and definitely approaching it from a snake oil salesman type of tack, where they know what they're doing is producing bullshit, but they don't care. They just don't care about the truth of it, and they don't care about manipulating other people.
Yeah, they care in so far as they care about getting money.
Right. Yeah.
That's their primary focus. Yeah. They just want to rake in the cash based on all this bullshit that they're trying to sell. Snake oil salesman, like you said. You know, and it's a pity that the rest of the conversation kind of disappeared from our recording device, because we had a lot of really interesting points that we brought up after his lecture. But
the half hour that we do still have actually was. Has some good stuff in there too.
Yeah, we'll be playing that at the as the last half hour of this episode. But I think it's I think it's natural that we kind of gravitated towards him after the lecture.
I think we all saw that this was a kindred spirit, even though we weren't expecting to see that, or I wasn't expecting to see that at all at Paracon. I thought it was all going to be earnest, or if not earnest, at least people presenting as earnest believers.
Right. That was
in paranormal and unbelievable stuff.
That's kind of how I felt going into it too.
Yeah. So even when he started talking, it took me a second to realize, hey, wait a minute, this guy is actually
yeah, because he opened his lecture with a video.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
of,
the Tic Tac.
The Tic Tac of a supposed UFO encounter, right? And the first question he asked was, okay, is this a UFO or not?
Mm-hmm.
And at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, where's he going with this?
Yeah.
Right? Because my first reaction was, this is fucking bullshit. Right? Like, I'm just thinking, it's going to be another UFO peddler. It's going to be a firm believer in this whole conspiracy shit.
Yeah, we're going to see like a half dozen videos of these objects that are 3 pixels wide. And
yeah, and I'm picturing that still image of the guy with the map with all these red strings attached to, just coming up with this conspiracy theory kind of thing.
That trope there.
Yeah, that conspiracy trope. But no, like Chris's lecture turned out to be super awesome to listen to. It's like that application of skepticism to UFO claims and going in and like actually trying to find firsthand primary sources for these events and the reports that are coming after them. Super important.
Right?
Yeah. When it comes to the UFO phenomenon, again, not going to deny that people are witnessing something.
Yeah.
But it's that the same leap, the something. What is that something?
Mm-hmm.
And the default position there should be, I don't know, until you can confirm and validate it objectively and independently with actual evidence.
I don't know why it's so difficult for a lot of people to separate what they want to be true from what is true. Like why people need what they want to be true. I'm maybe it's just me, but I feel like I'm able to entertain myself and be satisfied and glad of the out there interests that I have, or the enthusiast in me for UFOs or the paranormal or so. I feel like I can be an enthusiast without being deluded about whether or not we have anything credible that tells me that this is more than just fantasy.
Yeah. Like how many of our episodes...
it would be great if we could get something, and I'm not denying the possibility that we could get some evidence that maybe someday we'll find out that something we had classified as paranormal becomes normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Like how many of these episodes that we've done focus on things like the paranormal or UFOs or ancient aliens?
Well, that's it.
Like we explore these topics from a skeptical point of view without necessarily believing.
But at the same time, we're kind of celebrating them.
Yeah,
because that's where we're choosing to focus our attention.
Yeah, and like Chris's focus seems to be on going after the hucksters and the snake oil salesmen and the bullshit artists. And to a certain extent, we do the same, but on a larger scale and like a wider variety of topics. Whereas he focuses on the UFO phenomenon, we kind of branch out and talk about the bullshit behind things like religion and alternative medicine and anti-vaxxers and flat earthers and all these different areas of
maybe we're just more ADD where that's involved.
Maybe, but we had a lot in common. We had a lot to talk about, and it was a really great discussion that we had. And I would love to have him on the show again in a fuller capacity. So Chris, if you want to come back on the show at some point, we'd love to have you. We'd also love to appear on Den of Lore at some point because I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're working towards, I think, the same goal. We're working to dispel the bullshit, to apply skepticism to these different outlandish claims, and to just kind of get to the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Just to get to the bottom of it, what's actually true, because that's what I really care about. Is it true? Is it possible that aliens exist? I don't know. Maybe. From a probabilistic point of view, I would say it should be likely. I'm not going to say it is likely, because and that leads me into a whole other discussion of this idea of people saying, well, anything is possible. Fucking no, it isn't. Like, in order to say something is possible, you need to demonstrate that it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? And people saying, well, you
yeah,
know,
that's an easy hand wave
Yeah.
that a lot of people do. Well, anything's possible.
Yeah,
no,
no.
fucking no. And yeah, the anything is possible thing really bugs me, because we encounter sometimes the idea that like a believer in something can't be contradicted because you can't prove it's impossible, and that's
just shifting the burden of proof.
That's equated with his thing being possible.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because you can't prove it's impossible, therefore possible. Like that's not. It's not as dichotomous.
And it's also not how reason works, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a shifting of the burden of proof. The person making the claim adopts a
Right.
burden of proof
Yeah.
to demonstrate that claim as being
Yeah.
either possible or true, right? It's not on me to
But
say that something is impossible.
Yeah.
If you're saying something is possible, you need to therefore demonstrate
Yeah.
it.
But inevitably, when you're talking to somebody who's really invested in something unsupportable and is really not non-skeptical about their beliefs that are insufficiently supported by real life evidence and stuff like that, inevitably you'll get the response, well, prove it's not the case.
Yeah, prove me wrong, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or yeah. And I think that comes back to what we were talking about earlier.
As soon as you ask them to prove something, they'll say, prove it's not.
Yeah, you can't prove that it isn't.
Yeah, you
Or
can't
whatever.
prove it. Yeah.
Well, that's not my fault. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like the idea of teaching kids from an early
Yeah.
age how to think properly. You
Yeah.
know? That's, I don't know why this is, but like it seems to be.
I know
seriously lacking.
null hypothesis. I can't even say it. Null hypothesis has a lot of syllables in it, but you can definitely grasp the concept without having to teach the little kid all of those syllables. You know, like
Yeah, like
it's pretty straightforward. Like,
yeah, no correlation exists until one has been demonstrated to exist. You know,
there you go.
in a nutshell, without going into the statistics of it, that is the null hypothesis,
Mhm.
and that's the way I think we should approach pretty much everything. Like, yeah, it doesn't exist unless you can demonstrate that it does.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, that's that. So okay, I think we're at just past the half-hour point. Are we ready to listen to our what we managed to salvage of?
Yeah, let's go for it. There's a bit of noise in the background. We're in a Legion bar, and
Yeah, there is that. We recorded this during right after Chris's discussion.
yeah.
I think it was at the point where the psychic was giving the mass reading, so most of the crowd is downstairs at this point. We still have a couple of old fogies doing the Legion drinking thing, because I guess when you retire, that's what you do. So
Yeah.
when I retire, I guess I'm headed to the Legion. Long time from now, but anyway. So there's some background noise. For the most part, there's some points where it's quiet enough to kind of hear everything, but overall, I think we get the gist of the actual conversation in there.
Yeah. I mean, before we listen to it, I guess I just want to thank the OPRI guys, because these guys, they're the ones that put together this Paracon, but I like their attitude. Like, they've invited us along on one of their ghost hunts, and they at least have a sensibility for the skeptical approach or attitude.
Yeah. Not only that, they have integrity in what they do.
Yeah. I mean, they care about what's true or not, and they're willing to admit when they don't get a hit. You know, unlike the mentalists that call themselves psychics and stuff.
Right.
These guys are cool, and I think I would like to go back to their next Paracon if they do have a third one, and maybe we'll get a chance to ask some more of these people some of those questions and test mentalist.
Absolutely. I know John from OPRI has been a gracious host to us. Well, this would be the second occasion now.
Yeah.
So thank you, John, and everyone at OPRI for putting this together and having us there along with you. In case anyone is interested, they will be featured in an upcoming show. I think it's called Into the Haunting, but I could be wrong about that. We'll post an actual link to the show they'll be appearing on in the description to this video and podcast. They're also doing a large public ghost hunt at McDonald Williamson House, the place where we went to for our ghost hunting episode that you just mentioned.
Yeah, they're going back.
I think that's happening this week, so if you're interested, get in touch with them, tag along. It's a lot of fun. The place is amazing to begin with. We had a really good time when we did the ghost hunt last year. I'd love to do it again. So thank you to John from OPRI. Thank you to Chris from Den of Lore for putting up with our drunken conversation.
It was definitely alcohol fueled.
It definitely was.
Partially.
Can you believe that we've done 50 of these things?
Holy cow.
It's pretty awesome. Also want to thank you guys, both you and Luke. This show would literally not be possible without you.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Well, thanks for bringing us aboard, too.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for bringing me aboard.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I love this. This is lots of fun, and
This is what we do. This is what we do.
Here's to 50 more.
Here's to 50 more. And without further ado, here is the what we were able to salvage of our discussion with Chris Zuger from Den of Lore.
This is Chris George Zuger from the Den of Lore. I forget the name of this podcast, but they fucking kick ass. So, I used to have a co-host, Big Sexy Alex. He's called Big Sexy because the ladies love him. That's his. He hates that name. He fucking hates that name. He's like, oh, like Big Sexy, hashtag, and he like doesn't talk to me for a week after I call him that. But it was like the biggest thing for the show. Because it was personality. We were humans and real people, and we just didn't give a fuck. Spencer Cross came on the show. Nice guy. Fantastic guy. I don't know if he was full of shit or not, because people think like, oh, Chris is an asshole. Yes, kind of I am, but I'm willing to give my shirt off my back to help somebody out if I can. Like...
So you're an asshole about not being an asshole?
Asshole with a heart of gold. With a heart of gold, sir.
You say the golden asshole.
I wouldn't go that far.
That sounds waxed.
Waxed. Anyway, sorry.
So Spencer Cross came on, and he was talking about monoatomic gold, or Ormus, or at least the base form of Ormus, which is probably also bullshit. Think freebasing. Oh, it's not even. Like, do you want to seem like a gold crack dealer where you're freebasing fucking like gold by making some chemistry set in your kitchen? Because that's what you get with that shit, and you're hoping to God that you're going to be okay at the end of it. And he's like, oh, cured my cancer and did this and that. Like, you didn't even give us the full process. You just came on, gave us a couple of pictures, and tried to sell your book. That's what happened. And Alex just like lost interest completely at that point because he's like, it's all a fucking lie. And he knew at that point. That was his change moment.
It was his existential crisis.
Oh my God, he's smarter than I am. So yeah, he figured this shit out a lot earlier than I did.
What if you go in with the base assumption this is all bullshit?
You're fine.
Cool.
Because if you assume everything's bullshit and you start getting evidence to the contrary and you follow the evidence to its natural conclusion, which could be, yeah, it's bullshit, or, well, I guess that was a waste of time.
Right, so we're talking about the null hypothesis in that case.
Yeah.
You just assume that nothing exists until it's demonstrated to exist.
But you have to also assume that it's possible. It is the Schrodinger, like, well, the Schrodinger. No, I know Schrodinger. We used to have a term like the Schrodinger, like you basically it's your two balls on one side of a fence at the same time, which is the Schrodinger's cat, which is basically it's like I'm like my balls on this side, balls on that side. It's like I'm screwed or I'm not. There is a contradiction that can exist, which is assuming both things, but hoping to goodness that it's one or the other. But you assume that both are possible, like both realities exist, which is that the cat's dead or the cat's alive. You can assume that concept of the cat's dead or cat's alive, but that concept in reality is something that is impossible in reality because the cat's either dead or it's alive. Right. It's dead in one universe, alive in the other. So you have to assume that it could go one way or the other and accept the possibility. If you can do that, then you have an open mind and then you can look at the evidence objectively.
Well, I guess it depends on whether or not you accept the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics or the Everett Wheeler interpretation of it. Like that'll ultimately determine which side of the fence you are when it comes to like.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. I do this a lot. I overthink things and I translate them into reality. So sorry,
I just talked your ear off in like a long, rambling mess of different threads, which I'm going to tie back to the end because I always do that.
It's like a magician.
I was going to say like a comedian.
I'm that good. I could do that over 4 hours. You try to do that over 4 hours.
Challenge accepted, gentlemen. 4 hours.
I will drive down there.
Jeez, what are we,
and we
Jordan
will
Peterson? Everyone goes quiet.
It's like, is this an open subject we can talk about? Okay, here's the thing. He has a lot of points. Okay, this is the whole thing. Is Jordan Peterson, I'll use this as an example, is Jordan Peterson full of shit? Yes and no, to a certain extent.
He's
yes.
awfully useful to a lot of familiar people that we've already talked about.
Did you talk to a lot of Nazis?
No.
Did you talk to a lot of social justice warriors who also want to, like control how you talk and want to see that you're the victim? It's either fear or shame. Those are the two dichotomies when it comes to politics. Fuck them both. I prefer hope. I do not feel. I believe everyone should be included. I don't care. I will talk how I want, to whom I want, and I'll treat everyone the same because everyone's a fucking person, and every single person deserves the exact same regard, which is. Well, you're probably dumb as shit, but you seem okay, so I'll start a conversation with you.
I don't give a dialogue going.
I don't give a fuck if the person is a pineapple, gay, straight, transsexual. I don't fucking care. You identify as the lint I pick out of my belly button. Fine. Are you a good person? What is the content of your character? That is all that fucking matters. That is all that matters. Doesn't matter that is all that matters. Plain and simple. So there are certain things in terms of the left side that, yes, Jordan Peterson is right about. Why? Because I know my family escaped communism, where saying that you were Croatian back in Yugoslavia would get you fucking thrown in jail. My dad actually escaped jail and possible execution to come to Canada. So there are certain things, and if anybody wants to go out there, it's like, well, Croatians are neo-Nazis. I'm like, yeah, the U.S. is the exact same fucking way. There are certain elements in government that are going to be bad and certain elements that are good, and mostly when it comes to politics, everyone's bad because they're all in it for themselves. Politics sucks. But when it comes to what my parents went through, my uncle spent the better part of like 5 to 7 years in a concentration camp, escaping multiple times to get food or supplies and bringing them back into the camp after World War II with my grandfather, whom lost his entire, basically everything they owned at that point, and being forced to be able to say, you're a farmer now. Look, you're a woodworker. No, yeah, we need you to work the land. You're a farmer. That's what you are. So he lost his entire life before that. 2/3 of my family were wiped out by the partisans after World War II, by the communists. So I can understand where exactly Jordan's coming, because yeah, my family's actually lived that. I've also seen from the right-hand side where people are like, oh, the Nazis are rising back to power. Yes, because they fought against that shit too. And nobody's seen the bigger picture, which is either that everyone's being manipulated by a force outside of our countries, or there are actually two forces that are just in it for themselves. And just like Snoke said, I'm going to use a Star Wars reference, when the dark rises, the light rises to match it. Because when you swing one way of the pendulum, it has to swing almost the exact opposite way to be able to match it. There has to be balance. The more extreme on one side, it's more extreme on the other. You know what's extreme? You have a beard and I can't grow full facial hair. I should technically hate you because you can actually grow full facial hair. But you actually seem like a pretty cool guy. I want to actually know more about you. That is fucking rational. That is it's radical, but it's also rational. It's creating relationships no matter what our differences are. That is rationality. Mm-hmm. So Jordan's got a point, but at the same time he goes focus on the left when he should be focusing on the right, because you know what? The right will kill you faster. The left will just enslave you for like a century. So would you prefer the gas chambers or working in a fucking gulag until you're 90? Pick one, because one of the two is probably going to happen. I prefer life.
I prefer you bring the mic a little closer to me because I'm a giant egomaniac. No one can hear me now.
So Jordan, that's basically it.
I feel bad that we came to Paracon and we basically found the guy that's
knows
the
everything.
That's the big skeptic, basically.
Yeah.
And
No, I'm not.
We didn't really.
It's again.
I'm gonna say yes.
Well,
in
in
comparison.
comparison to some of the other
Skeptic's a
people.
dirty word, though. It's like calling me it's calling me like Trump's. Actually, are you a Trump supporter? I'm like, Trump supporter? No, hell no.
I've actually heard, I've heard that the term skeptic is, like, even within the atheist community, the term skeptic has become a dirty word to a lot of people, just because they associate it with ultra skepticism and, like, they're all full of bullshit. Like, skepticism is criticizing an idea from a rational perspective. That's all it is, right? You're not accepting something just because someone says so.
Sure.
You're demanding evidence for it. That's all skepticism is.
Well, what I'm saying is that we didn't pay much attention to.
No, you're right.
That we sort of failed in that regard, and we basically found the guy that we identified with, and was like, "Yeah, you come talk with
Confirmation bias for the win.
We succumbed to confirmation bias.
And this is the whole idea. Yes, exactly. You associated a positive emotional reaction with what I was saying and said, we gotta talk to that guy. Why? Because you want to feel good about hearing how right you are.
Well,
You're kind of right, but you're also a lot wrong. But you're kind of right also, which is still pretty cool. So I guess you're right.
So I'm gonna be totally honest here. When you started off your lecture or your presentation, I was like, I don't want to talk to this guy. He's a UFO believer. He's gonna be full of shit, whatever. Then as we went through it, I'm like, okay, I was wrong. And being able to admit that you were wrong about something is another important point when it comes to this type of topic, right? Because if you just assume from the get-go that you're right and you don't budge from that perspective and you go with it, again, you've lost. You become irrational, you become self-deluded, and you can't get anywhere with the conversation. You can't get anywhere towards recognizing what may or may not be true. You're just going from that assumption. So, you asked the question of...
What's the truth you want to know? What is the answer to the question you want to know, besides evidence, which is, it doesn't matter. So, as far as what evidence you need, multiple data points, being there, and it doesn't matter.
Well, nothing matters.
To you.
So we can look at it that
way. It
way.
matters to you. As long as it matters to you, that's all that matters. As long as you know the truth, but even then, what's the truth? And that gets into the whole philosophical shit, but that's neither here nor there. Multiple data points. That's your easy answer.
Yeah. Have you, for example, is there any that hold up to your scrutiny that you've seen? Any footage or something like that you go, like, maybe, you haven't been able to dismantle it?
Shit, you asked me a very hard question because I've seen so much bullshit. I had a guy once who sent me blurry blue lights that were out of focus. I don't know what the hell they were. They were just out of focus on a black field. He's like, man, there's these lights and UFOs that keep visiting me. And then he sent me a 15-page long explanation of why the Mossad had moved across the street to monitor him while he was being abducted. So this is usually what I get, and it's very hard to be able to pick the good stuff out of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
The best I probably could have seen as far as photographs would have been one that Denver Michaels had sent me that his sister had taken of a potential cigar-shaped UFO that we thought, it was like, well, fuck, it's got to be a UFO. But again, we were half having fun at that point. It's probably just a Mylar balloon.
Well, have you looked at it since?
It's a Mylar. It's a balloon. It's a
Right, okay.
The only one that I could say that looked the best as far as just either UFO or alien, I still go back to the Area 51 Roswell autopsy, and it's fake.
Yeah.
There is not one that I've seen that is actually real because I always assume bullshit. I'm usually right because I also can produce videos and edit photos for a living. So, photo manipulation, I kind of know. And
so the only piece of evidence that you find compelling is
if
your
I actually
personal
see it
experience.
Yeah.
I see it with my own. If I've experienced it or I felt it, and you know, even if you don't know, like again, if you actually have the comprehension of what is going on in terms of an actual experience, you get that, what I tried to get out of you, out of the whole. So you look like somebody who's had that fear before. Just because you've got the hairstyle of somebody who's lived, I can appreciate that. It's very nice.
Talking to Luke now.
So like, think the fear that you had when you saw that light. Now, or just even like anytime you've ever been in like extreme danger, like whether it was you're a kid and you're hanging onto a cliff, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna break my leg, or something along those lines where you didn't know if you were alive or dead, or just something that is just triggered this whole I gotta get the hell out of the situation, or the the split second before you're hit in a car accident where you know what's going to happen, but you don't know what's going to happen. You know some shit's going to get fucked up, but you don't know which way it's going to go. And there's that split second your brain goes, you could die right now.
Hey, how are you? Good.
Everything you ever loved, cared about is gone. I don't care about that. It is the most terrifying. It is contemplating non-existence. It's contemplating what's going to happen next. It is the unknown. I know, logically speaking, that I'm going to be able to walk outside of this building, get my car, and I'm able to drive the 5 kilometers to my friend's house, or the 5 minutes back home, and I'll be okay. I know, relatively, because based on past experience, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. What happens if I don't? What happens if I wake up tomorrow morning, I can't feel my legs? Or something out of the blue happens where all of a sudden there's nothing but terror because everything, you know, your entire fucking paradigm has been turned upside down. The world does not make any sense anymore. And you don't know where you are in that world. That is what an experience is. It is complete fucking terror because nothing makes sense. People will give you details about experiences. They're going to give you all this crazy bullshit of, well, the aliens were gray and they had these big heads. Fuck you, you're blind. That's bullshit. You tell me the fear that was in your eyes, that you didn't know where you were, that you had this terror. You talk to rape survivors when they were if they were kidnapped or held against their will. They didn't know if they're going to live or die. You tell that to rape experiences like, oh, that shit didn't happen. Again, unless they actually just made it up to be able to fuck over their ex-boyfriends, which does happen from time to time. It's the other side of the coin. It doesn't happen very often, and probably not as much as most people on the right will say. But again, the whole everybody lies. Mm-hmm. But if you look at somebody who has actually been through a rape experience, there is a terror and a fear and an emotional reaction at a core deep level that triggers something in them that just makes them afraid. Mm-hmm. Same thing for anybody who's actually had a real UFO experience. Details are usually
it's the same
fuzzy.
kind of trauma.
Okay, he talked about the light. Yeah. And again, it's you're looking at it from a light standpoint, and one of the reasons is you want to know why I know that I think that it's something that was normal, but because of the way that you were a little bit off. It's because you didn't tell me fucking base fear, because I know what a real experience is, because I know people who've been through real experiences, I've been through real experiences. There is a complete upending of your entire reality. It's one of the reasons why when I went, took 2 weeks off or 2 months off my own podcast, realizing, Jesus Christ, everyone around me is dumb as shit, apparently, when it comes to the paranormal and all this stuff, where I had to be able to think and say, nobody believes the actual truth and they're just going to believe whatever crap is shoveled at them. Oh my God, we as a species are fucked. I had to come to that, I had to come to terms with that before I could even move on. I didn't talk to anybody. I went off social media for 2 months. I haven't done that. My job is social media. I didn't talk to anybody. People thought I was dead. But I had to come to the reality that, yes, there's idiots in the world, and you got to deal with them. You can either be nice to them and say, like, yes, I believe you had a belief, and coddle them in their own ignorance and move on. But I had to come to that point, and there was a point in time where I'm just like, I'm going to fucking tear everything down. I'm going to disappear, and nobody's going to see me. Because, fuck it, the world doesn't make any sense. Everyone's dumb as shit. I don't want to deal with anything. Those are base emotions that go through your mind, and that is something that similar to any experiencer. So truth, an experience, or how do you know? Fear. Pure fucking fear.
I don't know, though. I don't know if that's, yes, but also
Unless
no. Let's say
don't feel fear.
Well, let's say you are a sociopath and you have that experience. They would just not, I don't know, no. A sociopath could still feel fear. I don't know what
Being drunk or high, marijuana will do weird things to you. And if you've ever had, whether you've been, I can hold my shit or not. Like, even though I've had 2 fingers of scotch, there's still the whole point, it's like, was I actually drunk during that orange herb thing? You question yourself because your mind wasn't all there. You were not...
I feel that I would question myself anyway, even if my mind were all there.
Well, that's the thing. Is what you're remembering exactly what happened, and that's the problem.
Well, I can't say.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Did you have that fear when you saw that?
Oh, absolutely. We ran.
Yeah. So the question again was, how do I know that something's real or not? It's the emotional, and even from the emotion, whether that emotion is imagined due to some potential. I'm saying the person who's listening to this, the potential experience based on psychedelic or some type of emotional enhancement through substance usage, then is that real? Possibly. In that moment, it is real. You're experiencing very strong emotions, whether they're artificial or not. It's real. Whether it actually happened in reality, that's verifiable.
Yeah, you're basically saying you can't know.
If I take a shot of ayahuasca and I trip balls so fucking hard I see the snake.
Can we do this?
Friends? No, God, no. No, God, no.
Ayahuasca is like...
How
No.
you do ayahuasca when you want to be able to look at yourself hard. When you're able to talk to yourself about the hard questions about yourself. When you question the actions that you make based on that you have your own failings, and you're like, should you really be doing this? Fuck that guy. The devil angel thing, that's kind of real to a certain extent. There's different parts of our psyche that are at least telling us that we know that this is not good, but we do it anyway. Like having that extra scoop of ice cream. You're like, it's going to make your ass fat.
Entire religion.
You do it anyway.
You're suggesting you basically
committing
have
genocide
to be at
and
peace with yourself to be able to do this kind of thing. Yeah.
Or people will justify bad actions. For whatever reason, they'll just marching people off to death.
You can't do that on ayahuasca.
No, you can't. Ayahuasca, if you put the people who did...
Well, have you tried it? Are you speaking from experience?
I'm not going to say one way or another because it's not a legal substance in Canada. I've had experiences based on things that have happened. It's actually through meditation, through... basically, it's actually probably nitrogen deficiency, where you're doing breathing exercises and it gets to a point where you start hallucinating. It's the same process. Mind-altering drugs are mind-altering drugs, whether it's air or some crazy-ass shit DMT that's coming out of your brain. Something triggers the DMT in your brain to be produced, or you can ingest it artificially through ayahuasca, and I don't touch the ayahuasca because it makes you puke, and I fucking hate drugs.
Yeah.
So meditation tends to be the way to be able to do it because the nitrogen deficiency tends to...
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is tapping into the unconscious kind of thing.
Yeah, and the thing is the unconscious is the same shit that you dream with.
Yeah.
Are dreams real? At the time, yeah. When you wake up, no, they're not. Is the dream an alternate reality? Maybe. Can anybody prove it? Fuck no, they can't. You want to know who wants to be able to prove it? The people who put out those Carlos Castaneda's books. Again, also people I know.
Yeah.
Great books. Fantastic. When I was growing up, realized it's a lot of altered stories that people made a shit ton of money off of.
Yeah.
Altered states of reality can do things based on altering your reality and perception. It can change small things about that experience, but it's not going to make that experience completely invalid. Like, if you saw bright light, it may have been brighter than it actually was. If you saw loud or heard a loud sound, it might be louder or quieter than it actually was based on the chemicals moving through your system. So what you saw could have been just a helicopter. It could have been a fucking UFO or a satellite that you thought, like, oh my god, it's too bright. On marijuana, even if it is quote-unquote shake, or even if it is the shittiest shit that you ever did shit out of, like, your grandma's backyard, it could still affect you in a way because you don't know the chemicals that are in it, what it was grown with.
I agree. It could happen even without it. I mean,
100%.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But you still saw something.
Saw something and had someone to confirm it with.
So
otherwise, I wouldn't have believed it.
Did you all smoke the same stuff?
Yeah.
So Paracon's wrapping up. I think we should do what we always do and go with our final thoughts, just so we can save that from the actual discussion recording next week. So let's start with Luke.
Well, I never have any final thoughts. To me, it's about keeping the dialogue going kind of thing. So I feel bad that we didn't pay attention to anyone else at Paracon.
Where are we? Who are you people? Where the hell am I? What is this? Oh my god.
Critical Junction.
Where are my pants?
How did that happen?
We're all naked, having had a few beers at the Legion. We're having a good time here.
Yeah.
This is a better show of mine than I've done in a very long time. Fuck.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you wung it well.
Who won it?
You wung it well.
You wung it well.
You people plied me with beer.
That's what we do. Jill, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I just struggle with balancing the sort of paradox of considering considering possibly imagined experiences as being in some sense real, or not imagined but subjective experiences as being in some sense real, and at the same time valuing objective reality and denouncing those who misrepresent it.
I can clear that up. Be willing to admit that you're wrong. That's distilling that down. To be able to accept that dichotomy is to be able to admit that both are possible. One can only be right because a contradiction cannot exist in reality, and that if you chose wrong, that you were wrong. Admit that, swallow your fucking ego, and you're okay. That's how you do it. There's your truth.
There we go.
And to your answer, yes, these guys are crazy, but they are awesome, and they're actually looking to do something good for themselves and try and find something deeper in themselves in terms of meaning as well as the society of whole. I know, I've been on the exact same journey, so they're pretty cool. Except for him, because my hair doesn't look that fucking good.
It's my hair.
Like, it is some sexy goddamn hair. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's some Jim Jarmusch hair.
Yeah.
That's some fucking Jim Jarmusch hair.
It's the I don't give a shit look.
There you
What do you
go.
guys think? Yeah, it's a working for
I
me?
wish I could have hair like that again. It's been a while. So I'm sorry. I'm taking over again.
As for myself, I'm going to bring the mic closer because I like to hear myself talk.
Touch your penis with it, Mark. Touch your penis with it.
That's my
phone!
Has he actually done that? I've done a show with no pants before.
No, he has not exposed himself to us.
Yet.
Thankfully.
Yes.
There's a reason why the camera's only up to here. Okay, no, I've got that.
Thank God for the opaque table.
Seriously. But I think, demanding evidence and being critical, being skeptical is really important when it comes to claims about the paranormal, UFOs, any of that. Following the evidence to where it leads, also extremely important. And don't just draw a conclusion based on your pre-existing biases. Form a conclusion after all, or as much as the information becomes available to you, and after you've had the chance to digest that information, so that you reach a conclusion that's as close to objective reality as you can get. I think would be the important takeaway of this conversation. You get the final word, because that's what we'd like to do to our guests.
I'm sorry, I had to. I've been holding that in for a while. I had to. I'm sorry. The final word is... I'll give you a good soundbite at least. I know comedy. I know... my entire thing is it's a metaphor. It is a metaphor for not taking things too seriously. At the same time, you have to take things very seriously. The choices you make matter in life. Even the smallest decisions can have catastrophic consequences if you choose wrong. Faith, improperly placed, could mean years of torment, years of pain, learning the why, the how, and the what the fuck of the decision you just made. Whether it's based on real information or not. I do this because, well, first of all, it's just fun, and two, because I know people can learn from it. I try and inform and entertain at the same time, because I know that people have short attention spans these days. Question. Think. Love. Dance like no one's watching. Listen to shitty music. Make those mistakes, but learn. The whole thing is to learn. And never, ever, ever deny yourself of who you are. Because a lie to yourself means you can lie to other people just as easily. And that doesn't do anybody any good.
Very good. This is, regular closing sign-off thing. This has been Critical Junction episode 50 on my birthday, recording live from Paracon 2018. I'm Mark.
Oh, I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.